Some men spend 31 years running into burning buildings and figure they've already met the worst thing they're ever going to meet. I retired at 62 believing that. Then a stranger called me at midnight about a bench outside a community center, and I found out the worst thing doesn't smell like smoke at all. It smells like a 9-year-old boy's backpack. But we'll get to that. Friday, September 12th. Bozeman, Montana. 11:52 p.m. I was asleep in my chair with a ball game finishing up on the television and a plate of cold meatloaf on the side table, which is what a 68-year-old widower's Friday night looks like when he's done pretending otherwise. My phone lit up on the arm of the chair. Unknown number. Local prefix. I almost let it ring out. I want you to understand how close I came to letting it ring out. Is this Walter Kearney? It is. Sir, my name is Hollis Pruitt. I do the night cleaning at the Gallatin Community Center over on Tamarack. I'm sorry to call so late. Your name's on an emergency card in the front office, third one down. He paused, and I heard him swallow. There's a boy out here on the bench. He's been here since we locked up at 6. I sat forward so fast the plate went off the table. 9 years old, dark hair, blue backpack with a compass hanging off the zipper. That's him, Hollis said. That's exactly him. 6 o'clock to 11:50. 5 hours and 50 minutes on a metal bench in September in Montana, when the sun goes down and the cold comes up out of the ground like it's got somewhere to be. Put him on the phone, Mr. Pruitt. And don't hang up. I'm 4 minutes out. There was a shuffle, a scrape, and then the smallest voice I have ever heard come out of a telephone. Grandpa? Hey, buddy. I'm coming right now. Are you cold? A little bit. A pause. I'm okay, though. I've got my jacket. He didn't have a jacket. I'd bought him that jacket myself the previous November, and I would find out later it had been packed into a donation bag in June. Diego, listen to me. Sit right there with Mr. Pruitt, and don't move for anybody else. Grandpa's headlights are going to come around that corner before you can count to 200. Quiet on the line. Then, is Mom mad at me? I stood in my kitchen in the dark with my keys already in my hand and my heart going like a fist against a door. Why would you ask me that, son? Because they left on Sunday and I think I did something. He said it fast, the way kids say the thing they've been rehearsing. I've been going to camp and coming home like I'm supposed to. I didn't tell anybody. I didn't want to get anybody in trouble. Sunday. It was Friday night. He had said Sunday. I don't remember putting my shoes on. I remember the drive, and I remember taking the corner onto Tamarack and seeing that boy stand up off the bench under a security light. And I remember Hollis Pruitt, 71 years old, with his coat around a child who was not his, and a look on his face that told me he'd already decided he wasn't leaving until somebody worthy showed up. Diego didn't say a word. He just walked into me and held on, and I picked him up all 61 pounds of a kid who should have been heavier, and stood there in a parking lot at midnight holding my grandson, while a stranger looked away to give us the dignity. I called both numbers on the card, Hollis said quietly. Mother's phone goes straight to a recording. Father's too. Camp season ended today. Nobody came at pickup. Nobody came at close. He shifted his weight. Mr. Kearney, I want to be plain with you. That child told me he's been sleeping at his house alone. He told me the code to his own front door. I looked at him over Diego's shoulder. Would you be willing to write that down? Everything you saw. Everything he said. With times on it. Hollis Pruitt didn't even blink. I'll have it to you by morning. And sir? He nodded at the boy. I hope somebody answers for this. They would. I just didn't tell him that yet. I buckled Diego and myself. He fell asleep before I got out of the lot. At the light on Oak and 19th, I did the thing I'd been telling myself not to do since Hollis said the word Sunday. I opened my daughter's page on my phone. Posted that afternoon at 4:31, Orlando, Florida. My daughter Sabrina in sunglasses, her husband Grant with his arm around her, and my 6-year-old twin grandbabies, Cole and Piper, in matching shirts in front of that castle everybody knows, holding oversized ice creams shaped like a mouse's head. Caption, our whole world, all 4 of us, best 12 days of our lives. 4. I read that word maybe 9 times sitting at a green light with nobody behind me and my grandson asleep in the back seat. 4, not 5. She'd counted her family out loud in front of everybody she'd ever known, and she'd come up 4. Friend, I have been in rooms that were on fire. I have never in my life been as cold as I was at that intersection. I got Diego home to my place on Chestnut and put him in the spare room that had been his mother's room back when she was somebody I understood. I sat on the edge of that bed until his breathing evened out. He had one hand curled around the little brass compass on his backpack strap, the one I gave him the day the adoption went final, when he was 4 years old and had already lived in 3 houses that weren't his. I'd told him, a compass means you always know which way home is. Then I went to the kitchen, put on a pot of coffee I had no business drinking, and opened a notebook. Sunday, September 7th, departure. Friday, September 12th, 11:52 p.m., the phone call. Every date, every hour. The name of the camp, the name of the custodian, the number on the emergency card, the caption on the post, and the timestamp under it. What Diego said, word for word, while it was still fresh enough to be exact. I wasn't writing because I was angry. Anger's loud and it burns out fast, and I've watched it take more houses than bad wiring ever did. I was writing because 31 years on an engine company teaches you one thing above all others. The people who win are the people with the report. At 2:40 in the morning, I searched 3 words into my phone. Attorney, child, Bozeman. The second name that came up was Marisol Vega. Vega Family Law, Main Street. 19 years. And under her photo, the line that made me sit up straight in my own kitchen. Former staff attorney, Montana Department of Child and Family Services. A woman who used to be the one filing the reports. I sent an email at 2:51 a.m. that read, "My name is Walter Kearney. I'm a retired fire captain, 68 years old, and my 9-year-old grandson was left without any adult supervision for 6 days while his parents took his siblings to Florida. He was found tonight alone outside a closed building. I have a written eyewitness statement coming and a timeline already built. I want to know every single thing the law allows me to do. I am not looking for an apology." Then I opened another tab, and I bought 2 tickets to Anchorage, Alaska. Now, before I tell you what happened in Alaska, do me one small favor, friend. If a story like this means something to you, hit that subscribe button and leave a like. Most folks listen all the way through and never do it. It costs you nothing, and it keeps this whole thing alive on my end. Tell me in the comments where you're listening from. I read them. Here's why Alaska. That boy has a paper map of the United States taped above his bed, not a poster. An actual folded road map that he found in my garage in a box of my late wife's things, and he asked if he could keep it, and I said, "Sure, buddy, take it." He colors in a state when he's been there. In 5 years he had colored in exactly one, Montana. He would lie on his stomach on my living room rug for an hour at a time with a pencil in his hand, not coloring, just looking. At 3:20 in the morning I called my daughter. I knew she wouldn't pick up. I didn't want her to pick up. I wanted her to roll over in a resort bed in Florida the next morning, reach for her phone out of habit, and find her father's voice sitting there waiting for her like a letter from a lawyer. The beep came. I kept it warm. I kept it easy. I have made 10,000 calm transmissions on a radio with a roof coming down, and this was no different. "Hey, sweetheart, it's Dad. Just letting you know I've got Diego with me, picked him up tonight. He's fine. He's asleep. Turns out he's been on his own a while. Don't cut your trip short on my account. He and I are going to take a little trip of our own. We'll talk when you're home." I hung up. I checked the boy one more time. He had rolled onto his side and his forehead was smooth, which I hadn't seen on him in longer than I wanted to admit. Then I sat back down and looked at the map of Alaska on my laptop screen, and I thought about how I had a written statement, an attorney with the state's own playbook, 2 plane tickets, and a daughter who had no earthly idea. Saturday, September 13th, 7:10 a.m. Diego came into the kitchen in his socks, hair standing straight up on one side, compass in his fist. "Grandpa, why are you dressed like that?" "Because a man wears a real shirt when he's flying." He blinked at me. "Flying where?" "Alaska." He looked at me the way a kid looks at you when he's been disappointed enough times to check the exits first. He didn't jump. He didn't yell. He said, very carefully, "For real Alaska, or pretend Alaska?" That right there. That's the sentence I'll be hearing when they put me in the ground. "For real Alaska," I said. "You and me. Wheels up at 11. He ran. He ran down the hall so hard he took the runner rug with him. And 40 seconds later he came back with the map. breathing like he'd sprinted a mile, and held it up with both hands. Can I bring this, so I can color it right when we land? Son, I said, you can color it on the plane. Monday, September 15th. Seward, Alaska, 9:40 a.m. I am a man who thinks a nice restaurant is one where the menu is laminated. I drive a 22-year-old pickup on purpose. When the woman at the lodge desk handed me the key to a room facing Resurrection Bay, with a wall of glass and a stack of towels folded like origami, I very nearly asked if there'd been a mistake. Diego walked in behind me, stopped 4 feet inside the door, and did not move. Out that window, black water, and mountains coming straight down into it, and fog sitting on the ridgeline like it was tired. Grandpa, barely a whisper, is this ours? For 6 days it is. The whole window? The whole window. He set the map on the bed, took the pencil out of his pocket, and colored in Alaska right there standing up, pressing so hard the paper dimpled. Then he looked at the 2 colored-in states, and he looked at the other 48, and he said, to himself, more than me, okay, okay. Day 1, we took a boat out into the fjords. He asked the naturalist 11 questions in 40 minutes, and I know it was 11 because I counted. Then a humpback came up 60 yards off the port rail and blew, and the whole deck yelled, and Diego grabbed a fistful of my coat and didn't let go until she went down again. Grandpa, he said, and his voice had gone strange. She's the biggest thing I ever saw, and she came up right where we were. She sure did. Why? Because she wanted to see who showed up. Day 2, a charter captain named Ike Sorensen, 60 years old, hands like catcher's mitts, no small talk in him at all. He put a rod in Diego's hands and said, "You bring it in, you clean it, that's the deal." Diego fought a halibut for 9 minutes and made a sound at the end of it I had never heard him make. He cleaned that fish, too. Ike stood over him the whole time, saying, "Slower, slower, there you go, that's a fisherman," and I stood on the other side of the boat and had to look at the water for a minute. Day 3, the lodge cook. Her name was Bertie Halverson. She'd been in that kitchen 26 years, and she took one look at Diego hanging around the pass and put an apron on him. She taught him sourdough pancakes with a starter she said was older than both of us combined. Flour everywhere. On him, on her, somehow on me. "You keep him," Bertie told me, dead serious, wiping her hands. "This one listens." I said I intended to. But here's the part nobody in that lodge saw. Every night, once Diego was asleep, I took my phone out onto the little deck off our room, slid the door shut behind me, sat down in the cold with the water black and moving in front of me, and called Marisol Vega. 9 p.m. sharp, every night. 10 p.m., her time, and she picked up on the first ring every single time. Marisol Vega did not do pleasantries. I asked her once how her weekend was, and she said, "Productive. Tell me about the school records." "Night 1, she said. "Mr. Kearney, I want to be direct with you, because I think you can handle direct. I'd prefer it. What you've described isn't a bad decision. In Montana, it has a statutory definition. Leaving a child under the age of 12 without adequate supervision for a period of days is neglect, not a gray area, not a judgment call." Papers moved on her end. "What you have is unusually clean. You have a third-party eyewitness with a signed, timed statement that's the piece most of my cases never get. You have a public post placing both parents out of state during the exact window. You have the child's own account, which I want recorded properly, and I want it done by someone trained, not by you, because I will not give anyone room to say his grandfather coached him. And you have a documented rescue by a mandatory reporter adjacent third party at 11:52 at night. What do we do with it? 3 things at once. 1, I file the report, not hold it, file it. 2, I file an emergency petition for temporary guardianship, ex parte, which means we can be in front of a judge before your daughter's plane lands. 3, I subpoena the school. If there is a counselor's note in that boy's file, I want it. I grip the rail. There is one. Last February. His teacher called me. I called Sabrina about it, and she told me to stay in my lane. Silence for a second on her end. Then, "Mr. Kearney, write down the date of that phone call and anything you can remember about it before you go to bed tonight." Night 2, she walked me through the money. "You're going to want to change your will," she said. "Everyone does, in your position. I'm going to tell you how to do it so it can't be undone. And I'm going to tell you how to do it so it doesn't ruin him. I'm listening. An irrevocable trust. Once it's executed, it is outside your estate and outside anyone's reach. Not your daughter's, not her husband's, not any attorney they retain, not a probate challenge, not a claim of undue influence. It is finished. A pause. But you will not release the whole thing to a child on his 18th birthday. I have watched that go wrong more times than I can count. Education and housing at 18, administered by an independent trustee. The remainder at 25. And you name a successor trustee and a successor guardian now, in writing, both of them younger than you. Why both? Because opposing counsel's first move against a 68-year-old petitioner is your age, and I intend to have that answered before they finish the sentence. I thought about it for about 4 seconds. My niece Nadia, 41, ICU nurse in Missoula, married, 2 kids, and she has loved that boy since the day we got him. Get me her number tonight. Night 3. The door slid open behind me. Diego, in his pajamas, squinting. Grandpa, who are you talking to at nighttime? I covered the phone. Just some grown-up business, bud. Go on back to bed. He considered this with the enormous solemnity of a boy who suspects he's being handled. Then can I have hot chocolate from the lobby machine? It's 9 o'clock at night. It's Alaska, though. I want the record to show that I am on a deck in Seward with a former state child welfare attorney on the line building a case against my own daughter, and I am being negotiated with over cocoa. 1 cup. Then bed. He vanished. I put the phone back to my ear and apologized. Don't, Marisol said, and for 1/2 second something almost human came through that lawyer voice. How is he doing? He laughed at breakfast until he got the hiccups. Good. Hold on to that and start writing it down too. The contrast between his documented decline over the past 18 months and how he is right now, in your care, that contrast is going to carry more weight in front of a judge than anything I say. I wrote it on the back of a lodge receipt and I still have it. It was night 4 I wasn't ready for. We were at dinner at a place on the harbor, the kind with paper on the tables and a window full of masts. Diego was working through fish and chips and giving me a full scouting report on every French fry individually. And then he stopped, put the fork down, looked at the table. Grandpa, can I ask you something, and you won't be mad? You can always ask me anything. He kept looking at the table. Is it because I'm not really theirs? The restaurant kept going. Somebody laughed at the bar. A server called out a table number. And at our table, everything just stopped. I set my fork down. I reached across and took both of his hands in mine, and those hands were so small, friend, they were so small, and I told him the truth, all of it, carefully, at the size a 9-year-old can carry. I told him what adoption is and what it is not. I told him a family isn't a thing you're issued at birth. It's a thing people choose out loud, on paper, in front of a judge, with their whole name signed at the bottom, and that somebody choosing you is not the runner-up prize. It's the entire event. I told him that whatever was broken in that house was broken before he ever walked into it, and that a 9-year-old cannot be the reason grown adults behave badly. I told him I had spent 31 years going into buildings to get people out, and that there was not one thing on this earth or in the state of Montana that was going to keep me from getting him out. His eyes went shiny. He nodded slow, working through every piece of it the way he does. Then he sniffed and said, "Can I have your coleslaw? You can have anything on this table. And can we get the pie? 2 pies. He smiled small first, then wider, and then the real one, the one that gets all the way up into his eyes and stays. I excused myself, walked back to the restroom, ran cold water over my wrists, and looked at myself in that mirror for a long minute. Because I had been steady at that table, he needed steady, so steady is what he got. But I'm a man, not a monument. And 2,000 miles south of me, my daughter, my only child, who I taught to drive on a gravel road outside Belgrade, who I walked down an aisle 11 years ago and cried the whole way, was sleeping fine. That was the thought that dried my hands. I went back out, sat down across from him, and I quit weighing it. No more second guessing. No more she's my kid too. We were going home, and Marisol Vega had work to do. If you've made it this far, friend, hit that like button. It's the whole reason stories like this find people. Wednesday, September 24th, Bozeman, 8:59 a.m. Sabrina's family landed on the 22nd. She'd sent me exactly one message, 8 words, no punctuation. Got your voicemail, we should talk in person. I forwarded it to Marisol with one line. Wednesday, my house, 9 a.m. She replied in 3 minutes. I'll be there at 8:59 with everything. She was. Charcoal suit, flat shoes, a briefcase with the corners worn off it. She set 2 folders on my dining table, took coffee without ceremony, and sat down like she'd been sitting there her whole career. They don't know I'm here, she said, not looking up. They think it's family talk. The corner of her mouth moved about a 16th of an inch. It is. It's just going to be a well-documented one. At 9:04, I heard the car. Diego was at school. I'd made certain of that. Grant came in first, my son-in-law, 41, tanned, wearing a collared shirt like a man who'd dressed for a meeting. Sabrina behind him with her chin up and her arms crossed, already loaded. She had spent the drive building her argument. You could see it sitting on her. Then Grant saw the woman at my table and stopped walking like somebody had pulled his plug. Dad. Sabrina's voice went thin. Who is this? Sabrina, Grant. This is Marisol Vega. Family law. 19 years. And before that she spent 6 years working for the state on cases exactly like this one. Sit down. There's coffee. Sabrina didn't sit. This is unbelievable. You called a lawyer on your own daughter, Mrs. Kearney Whitaker. Marisol didn't raise her voice 1 decibel. Please, sit down. She sat. Marisol opened the folder and slid a single sheet across the table like she was passing the sugar. No speech, no build-up. Sunday, September 7, 6:15 a.m. Vehicle departs. Residence. 4 occupants, per neighbor's doorbell camera, on the opposite side of the cul-de-sac. September 7, 12. Minor child Diego Kearney Whitaker, age 9, present at residence with no adult supervision. Child self-transported to and from day camp. Child reports consuming cereal, crackers, and half of each camp provided lunch, saved for evening meals. Friday, September 12, 6 p.m. day camp season concludes. No authorized adult arrives for pickup. Friday, September 12, 11:52 p.m. Child located outdoors, unsupervised, by facility custodian Hollis Pruitt. Signed statement attached. Friday, September 12, 11:56 p.m. Child retrieved by maternal grandfather Walter Kearney. Attachment C. Social media post. Timestamped September 12, 4:31 p.m. Placing both parents in Orange County, Florida. Grant read it and his face didn't move. Sabrina read it and her face did nothing but move. This is your twisting we had arrangements, Dad. Grant's cousin Tricia was supposed to. Miss Vega, Marisol said, asked Miss Tricia Whitaker about that on Monday. She slid a second sheet over. Miss Whitaker states she was asked in a group text on August 30th, never confirmed, and was in Idaho the entire week. She has provided that text thread voluntarily. Sabrina's mouth closed. I'm going to save everyone some time, Marisol went on, in the pleasantest voice I have ever heard do that much damage. We are not here to establish whether it happened. It happened. We are here so you understand what has already been done. Already. I watched that word land on my daughter. On Tuesday, the 16th, Marisol said, I filed a report with the Department of Child and Family Services. It is not sealed. It is not pending my discretion. It is filed, and as of Monday it carries a substantiated finding. Grant finally spoke. You can't just... On Wednesday the 17th, she continued, as if he hadn't. I appeared before Judge Ellery Hoskins on an emergency ex parte petition. Mr. Kearney was granted temporary guardianship of Diego that afternoon. It has been in effect for 8 days. The full hearing is October 9th. You will both be served this afternoon. I'd rather you heard it here first. The room went quiet in a way that had actual weight to it. He's 68, Sabrina said, and her voice cracked on it. He can't. 68, cleared by a full physical on September 22nd, 31 years of public service, no record, homeowner, no debt. Marisol laid down one more page. And with a named successor guardian, Nadia Corliss, 41, registered nurse, Missoula, already consented in writing and already background checked. That boy will not be placed again. Ever. I built this specifically so nobody could ever ask that question twice. And that is when my daughter looked up at me for the first time since she came through my door. Her eyes were red. Dad. Just that. One word, carrying 6 days, and 18 months, and 11 years. I gave her nothing. I let her carry it herself the rest of the way. I knew, she said. Her voice came apart in the middle. I knew the whole time. Grant said it was one trip, that Diego doesn't even like crowds, that we'd do something special with him after. And I told myself that because it was easier then. She stopped. Her jaw worked. I packed my bag and I walked past his door, and he was sitting on his bed with that map, and he asked me what state we were going to, and I told him. I told him Florida, and I said, "See you soon, bud." And I picked up my suitcase and I closed the front door behind me. Grant turned and looked at her, hard. She didn't look back at him. She kept her eyes on me, wrecked and completely out of armor. I wanted to be furious. I was furious. But underneath it, older than it, was something else. And I'll tell you what it was, because I've never been any good at pretending. It was grief. Clean, plain grief. For a girl I raised and a woman I didn't recognize. I let myself hold that for about 3 seconds. Then I opened my own folder and slid it across. I know you knew, Sabrina. That's the part I can't get past. She flinched like I'd reached across and touched her. Grant grabbed the folder first. Read it. Set it down slowly. The house on Chestnut. The accounts. The 80 acres outside Livingston that my father left me and his father left him. All of it, as of Friday the 19th, sitting in an irrevocable trust for Diego. Education and housing released at 18 through an independent trustee out of Billings, the balance at 25. Not revocable, not contestable, not touchable by any attorney either of them could ever afford to hire. And on the second page, one line that I insisted on and that Marisol argued about with me for 20 minutes, 2 separate modest college accounts, funded, in the names of Cole and Piper Whitaker. Sabrina found that line and looked up, confused. They're 6 years old, I said. None of this is theirs to carry. I'm not going to do to them what was done to him. But their grandfather is going to be very clear, for the rest of his life, about who was left on a bench. Grant said, "This is punitive." "No, son," I said. "Punitive would have been what I wanted to do at midnight on the 12th. This is just accurate." Marisol closed the briefcase with a soft click and laid out the terms going into the October hearing. Diego stays with me. Weekly sessions with a licensed child therapist, paid by the trust. Supervised visitation for Sabrina, at a facility, 1 hour, weekly, contingent on completed parenting and family counseling with documented attendance. For Grant, no contact pending evaluation, and I'll tell you the reason plain. In 11 years that man never once signed a card, Dad. And the school file had it in black and white, a counselor's note from February flagging Diego's withdrawal, received, acknowledged in writing by both parents, and never acted on. "These aren't offers," Marisol said pleasantly. "They're the position we're taking into court, and the court already knows the file." They signed the acknowledgement at 10:41. Grant walked out first without a word. Sabrina stopped at my door, with her back to me and one hand on the frame. "Is he?" Her voice caught. "Dad, is he okay?" I let that sit in the air a while, long enough for her to feel it. "He will be," I said. "No thanks to you, but he will be." She nodded at the doorframe and went out. 6 months later. March. Bozeman, Montana. Diego lives here now. Permanent guardianship came through the second week of December. Judge Hoskins said from the bench that in 19 years he had rarely seen a petition as thoroughly documented, and he looked over his glasses at me when he said it. Marisol didn't smile. She wrote something down. I think that's her version of smiling. "That boy eats like a horse and has gained 11 pounds. He sees a therapist named Miss Okonjo on Thursdays. He says her office has a lamp shaped like the moon and that she lets you not talk if you don't feel like talking, which he says is the best part and which I suspect is exactly the point. The map is on his wall in his room. Alaska's colored. Montana's colored. Idaho got colored in November because we drove to Coeur d'Alene to see Nadia, And Wyoming got colored in February because I decided a man doesn't need a better reason than the truck's got gas. He's got 46 left. I've told him we're going to make a serious dent. Sabrina comes to the supervised visits. Every single one, an hour a week, never late. She brings a book and reads to him, and she doesn't perform it, and she doesn't cry in front of him, which I have come to understand costs her something. Her counselor told her, and she told me on the phone during one of the careful conversations we have started having again, that Grant had never wanted the adoption finalized, that he'd treated it as a temporary arrangement he was waiting out, and that she had spent 11 years shrinking to fit a house he built. She filed in January. It'll be final in the fall. I'm not a therapist. I'm a man who used to put out fires. But I know the difference between somebody performing change and somebody attempting it, and my daughter is attempting it. Slowly, badly, some weeks. It's not redemption. It's the road toward it, and she is at least on the road. Cole and Piper come with her once a month now. The first time, Piper crossed that whole visitation room at a dead run and hit her brother like a linebacker and said, "Where did you go?" And Diego looked over her head at me with an expression I'm not going to try to describe. Some of you are going to tell me I went too easy on my own daughter, that she should have gotten nothing, ever. I've heard it from 2 of my sisters already, and I have thought about it at 3 in the morning more nights than I'll admit. Tell me what you'd have done. I mean it, I'm still not certain I got that part right. But I'm certain about the rest. Last Sunday, I found him on the living room rug, on his stomach with the map and a pencil, and he'd drawn a small line in ink out from Seward into the water, and a little shape at the end of it. "What's that, Bud?" "That's where the whale came up," he said, without looking away from it. So I don't forget where it was. They spent $34,000 to show the world their family was a party of 4. I spent every dollar I had left, and every day I've got coming to make sure one boy never again has to wonder whether he counts. And that's the whole of it. If this one got to you, do me that favor, like it, subscribe, and tell me in the comments where you're listening from and what you'd have done in my chair. I read every one. Thank you for sitting with me. I'll see you on the next one.